Hello and welcome to Rage Quit. My name is Jay, and today, well, it was actually yesterday that Games Workshop put out the FAQ and errata for Warcry, and they've, I say, fixed two really important rules, and then the rest I'm like completely almost indifferent on. But yeah, we'll talk about that. If at the end of this video you like the video, then press like, it makes sense, doesn't it? And if you're not subscribed and you're interested in like skirmish games, Warcry, etc., please subscribe. That also helps. So yeah, the FAQ. I'll just show you the image because I've got it on the screen and I can do. So we'll do that. So there's two main important rules, which is what they actually literally talk about on this article. If you go on the community website, you can see it right there and there, right there and then. And basically, it talks about, and this is interesting because they've had to make a rule based on the fact that they didn't plan ahead with the terrain that they made. So for those of you who have the starter set, you may notice that the terrain is like just under 3 inches, and a lot of the rules sort of depend on whether or not it's just under or just over, like falling damage, etc. So people were like, well, what do we play this as? Was it intended to be 3 inches, but it's just under? Can you just straight right run off it, fall off it, or whatever? And yeah, we didn't know basically. And yes, so they've basically said that vertical terrain will get rounded up to the nearest inch. So if it's 2.75 inches, it'll get rounded up to 3 inches. And now it's, I think, what's it say? It's like, you notice the scenery is ever so slightly shorter than 3 inches. You can laugh now with glee as your enemies take impact damage from being knocked off the edge of buildings once more. Fine. But it's funny that they had to make a rule sort of just because they didn't plan ahead, or I guess that's the classic, the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing kind of thing. But I say it's a big change. It's one of the biggest changes in here. And then the other big change, which I think they basically fixed cover, and that is great news because it was, people liked it. And what I find interesting is that there'll be lots of people who did like it who are now going to be like, I liked it the way that it was. But even the sort of Games Workshop admit that it was coming up to like, it was, let's read it. The original wording could lead to some odd situations along big walls where fighters would count as being in cover despite being stood out in the open. Yes, and that was the main problem. You could be like, literally have the wall next to you, and you'd be right in front of me, or vice versa, whatever, and we'd both be getting cover, or one of us would get cover if you were closer to the wall or not. And it was weird. It was weird. I think a lot of people did like it, but I personally always thought it was a bit janky. And now, and there's a video from Blackjack Legacy who put his video up last night, which sort of visually demonstrates this. But we can read it if we want to. In the cover section here, where is it? Terrain. I'm going to sort of simplify it as best I can. You now measure a line from the closest point in each unit. So I really like that part of it. That is the closest point. From me to you, it's the closest point, which on round bases are generally going to be like the forward point. Like it's the shortest distance. Because I think like rules like in Kill Team, they try to do any point on the base, etc. Nope. This is literally just the shortest points on the model. And I guess in a line, if that line then crosses some terrain, then you, I'm gonna say let's say you get cover, right? The cover is applied, except in one situation, and that's when if I am the attacker and I'm half an inch closer to, or not closer, I'm within half an inch of an obstacle, like a low wall, and then the unit I am attacking is more than an inch away from me. And I'm doing a ranged attack that is obviously more than 1 inch in attack. So it has to be more than, well, it has to be ranged basically, so 2 inches or more. Then cover isn't applied. And I think the way you can think of that, and I do like this rule, I like the fact that they even bothered to add this in, is because if you're like right next to the wall and you're doing like a ranged attack to somebody who's far enough away, in reality, you're not going to shoot into the wall. You're going to like put your weapon over the wall and shoot, or it may even rest on the, depending on what it is. Obviously, if it's like a javelin, but you've got to have some sort of like realistic, like possibilities. Well, you've got to keep it both realistic and gamey, as in the sense that you have to make things go quickly. So like if you've got a crossbow, it makes sense. If you've got a javelin, or you're throwing a net, it might not make as much sense. But I think all in all, that concept of just the closest point, if you're within half an inch of the terrain but your enemy is like further than an inch, then you can just ignore it basically. Fine, perfect, I like it, it seems decent. Whether or not you can then shoot through holes and railings and stuff, I'm not 100% sure. Don't know too much, but I think as a base rule that's perfectly fine. They have changed some other things, which not necessarily massive changes. Obviously there is no magenta because we don't have a revision 2. However, I think they do say, so we're getting this now, the rules updates are due in winter and again in summer. So at the end of this year probably we'll get a rules update. Now I have a bit of a problem with changing some of these. Now, I don't mind like erratas that sort of clear things up, but they literally have changing some abilities. Like I think Onslaught has changed. I don't think it had a range characteristic, although I'd have to double check, and I'm not going to. Now you can only do it if it's less than 3 inches. But they're literally changing some of the game modes, and I think whilst I think some of them might have been broke, or like not broke, but just a bit janky at times, I find to very quickly change the cards. When there are so many cards, it's going to be hard to keep track of. Like burn and pillage, do you get like they're now changing that a little bit. Treasure, I think they changed the treasure to like you can now like drop it and stuff like that. Maybe you could always drop it. I don't think I've actually played a game of treasure. But the fact that they're changing like some of the game modes, I'm sort of torn about. I think in one hand it's a good idea. Like if something's not very good, you change it. On the other hand, you now have cards that are completely like wrong. Now Star Wars Legion has that problem a little bit, but they actually print off the cards on the back of the PDF, so you could have an updated one if you just printed it, cut it out, or what have you. This is more like you've just got to keep this with you, because if we bring out hold our gains, are we going to play the new one or are we going to play the old one? It depends if you've got the FAQ to hand, I guess. So I'm not going to go through those specific changes. I don't really know too much about them, but yeah, without getting the cards out and comparing and contrasting, I'm not going to bother. But I don't know how to feel about those. I feel like a little bit weird about them. And then some of the the main question, which I always thought was just not obvious, but I always thought I was playing it as immediately, and that turns out to be the answer, which I think is the correct answer. It's like if an ability allows another friendly fighter to make a bonus action, such as the Beastmaster, like with the Beast, when is that action performed? And it's you just do it straight away, immediately. Fine, because people like, do you do it after the action activation, etc.? Now you just do it straight away and then come back basically and do your second action. So yeah. You can, if you finish halfway up climbing, then do your attack, you then fall down, which I'm not sure if that. I always thought you just you stayed there, but whatevs. That's it. So there's a couple of extra things. So if you want to read it all, like read it. It says if you draw a card that's not possible, like the higher ground card, just redraw. If you draw it and there is no terrain high enough, you redraw. Fine. So some sensible answers. But the real nuts and bolts of this change here is the cover rules and the terrain height on the core set. The terrain height on the core set is just sort of funny that they had to do it, I think. I find that amusing, but maybe that's just me. And the cover rule, I really like the new cover rule, and the bit of me wonders like how the first cover rule got through without them knowing that it led to that situation. But I mean, who knows? The new rule, you draw a line between the closest points. If you go through an obstacle, they get cover, except in that one exclusion, whereas if you're half an inch within, if the attacker's half an inch within the terrain and you're doing a longer than range 1 attack, as in they're further away than 1 inch, you don't get cover. Fine. I like that so far. I don't know if that's controversial at the moment. I'm sure some people will find some wording that finds it a little bit odd, but for me, that logically and pleases me a lot more than the old rule. Like I sort of just had a problem with it being like out in the open and swinging next to walls. I just couldn't get my head around that. I do recommend, if you want a visual representation of that new cover rule, I'll whack in Andy's video. It's very short, like 2-3 minutes, so not very much out of your time, if that makes sense. That's it. I'm off. It's quite tired this morning. I just woke up. Have a most beautiful day. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.